Let's go from that, Congress, where one of the provisions we adopted in the House rules based on the contract with America was a simple thing, saying members of Congress should live under the same laws as everybody else. Did this new Congress forget that basic concept with this proposed change in the so-called Independent Ethics Commission?
No, JD, and they don't think so themselves. I've just returned from Capitol Hill today, spent my entire day talking to members of Congress taking the oath for the 115th Congress. No one is volunteering details, but at the same time, many say that if they live under the same laws as everyone else, then they can be prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney's Office in the District of Columbia, the Justice Department, or just about anyone else who could prosecute this reporter. In other words, they don't need a special prosecutor when they live under the laws of the land. I've heard this argument for many years. I recall in the 1960s when the first investigations went through that destroyed the careers of Congressman Adam Clayton Powell, Senator Tom Dodd of Connecticut, and a few others. That led to an ethics committee, and what followed was an ethics office. The argument against it was always there are prosecutorial venues that exist already. That was the argument members made in defanging the so-called watchdog.
Well, of course, you talk about the here and now all through my days in Congress, on both the House and the Senate side, ethics committees, you made mention of them, the only committees where there are an even number of Democrats and Republicans, so there is no majority status. And I can remember celebrated cases where we actually expelled members of Congress. I think about it, and it caused me great pain to have to vote to expel Jim Traficant, the Democrat of Ohio, but we moved forward with that. The ethics process worked. Here's the concern that Tom DeLay and others have voiced, John, that you go back to when this, quote, independent commission was set up. The suspicion was it wasn't very independent. It was a creature and a creation of Nancy Pelosi, and it existed for one reason, to take exception to Republicans on the Hill. Now, that was the perception of members on the Republican side. It may not be fashionable, it may not be easily explicable to the American people, but is that not a concern with some foundation?
No one is really saying that today. They're merely saying that they could be prosecuted the way anyone else can. And of course, the defenders of the independent prosecutor like to point out Jim Traficant was prosecuted and expelled from Congress. Then again, before this office existed, remember, two members of Congress, Lederer and Myers of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, were expelled in the early 1980s in the Abscam scandal. To find other members who were expelled, one has to go back to the Civil War. So it worked without an ethics office, and expulsion has worked with an ethics office. Is it directed toward Republicans? The evidence and numbers would indicate otherwise.
Well, that was the suspicion, but it is worth noting that all they wanted to do was to take this, quote, independent committee and put it within the rubric of the existing House Ethics Committee structure. But the perception was poisonous, and they moved against it.